a minute or so. Give it a minute or so more. I was just checking my stream settings. I think I'm good though. I think I'm streaming here. I'll give it a minute for people to come on, listen to the music. We're talking the Great Reset today, folks. Talking the Great Reset, what it is, what it means for you, and how you can start preparing for that future. Beautiful music playing this morning. Who was that? This is Stick Figure, all for you. Here we are. Hello, everyone. Good morning to you. This is episode 4 of Joe Rap TV. Today is November 16th, 2020. The sky is blue here where I am reporting from an undisclosed location here in New England, from inside a vehicle. You know, I had the opportunity. I've got an hour to kill, so I wanted to come on the live stream, and today I wanted to talk about the Great Reset. The Great Reset, what it is, what it means for you, what it means for your digital and your financial freedom. We're talking about the shift to a digital world, and so all that good stuff. So if you're interested in the Great Reset, that's what you're going to be learning over the next 20 minutes or so. I am streaming remotely here from a mobile device from Streamlabs. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments section for me. If I can get to them from this device, I'll answer them during the live stream. If not, I will come back to the comments from the live stream after this, once I'm back in a physical location, and I'll be able to answer those questions for you. I'm going to drop this jacket right now. It's a little warm in here. I should have cracked the windows a little bit, but that's okay. Before we get started, I want to show you guys a good book that I'm reading right now. For those of you that are trying to learn more about Bitcoin, if you've been following me in my Bitcoin education, and my videos and my content, you're wondering where I learn a lot of this information from. I've talked about Andreas Antonopoulos in the past. He's got a few books out that are awesome. The Internet of Money and the Bitcoin, and also an O'Reilly good textbook on Bitcoin from start to finish. The second book that I would recommend to people is this one right here. It's called The Bitcoin Standard. The Bitcoin Standard. This one's written by Saifedean Ammous. And I apologize if I mispronounced that. But what you're looking for is The Bitcoin Standard. These two books are really good. This book itself, I highly recommend to people to read, because what he does a good job of is talking about money in general, what money is, history of money, history of currencies. He built a lot of the history into talking about Bitcoin, and if you start learning about that, then it becomes a little bit easier to understand the technology and to understand the significance of this technology and what it means for the world. So highly recommend this book. Again, Bitcoin Standard. But let's get to the Great Reset though, because that's what today's video topic is going to be all about here. So what is the Great Reset? The Great Reset is a term and a name that was created by the IMF about a year ago, I think. I think it was within this past year or a little bit more. We saw this name come out along with Joe Biden's campaign with the Build Back Better slogan. Build Back Better is a slogan that's also been used by Boris Johnson, the world, again, I think it was the WTO, and the IMF. So that was a part of this kind of globalist view on resetting the economy, resetting society, going into the future, hence the name The Great Reset. For those of you that are Canadian, you may have heard Justin Trudeau most recently over the last couple of days here alluded to the idea that the COVID provides us with the opportunity for the Great Reset to take place. So this is along the terms of what it is. So again, what is it? It's a global initiative run by the global leaders, and by the global leaders I mean the World Bank, the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, countries around the world and their governments, and along with the central banks. This seems to be the group of individuals that we're referring to. But this is an initiative to reset the economy, reset society, and what I believe is to propel us into what will become the true digital age. You see, we are not in a truly digital age yet. A lot of people think we are because we live with cell phones and devices now, but a lot of our daily work and our lives may seem like they exist online. But this initiative is what is going to connect everything in one digital entity online for the world. A lot of people have said, well, maybe a reset's needed, maybe this is needed. But as you'll learn through this conversation, what will come with it seems to be a lot less freedoms and individual sovereignty for people, and unfortunately more wealth inequality and a money that is highly traceable and is all digital. So what people think that they're fighting for nowadays, in my opinion, if you look at what's going on around the streets and the protests of people in the United States, a lot of them are talking about inequality, wealth inequality, and these freedoms. But unfortunately, they're promoting the individuals that will roll out this new world order, which will come with it a more connected currency, a more connected government, more regulatory oversight and control, and less individuals for the sovereign. So, this is something that I've been following quite closely. We've been talking about in the Nonconformist now for a while. So this is just kind of an update of where we are and where we stand. So again, who's involved with the Great Reset? It is governments. It is the World Bank and this banking elitist kind of class, the Federal Reserve Bank, Europe, the EU, the ECB. A lot of these political leaders are all in favor of this reset. But why is this reset taking place? This Great Reset is being announced at a time where the world is also calling for a new reserve currency. As of 3 weeks ago, I believe roughly it was, in October of 2020, the IMF had called for a new Bretton Woods monetary reform. And what that means is that they're calling for a new reform of what is the reserve currency of the world. The last Bretton Woods agreement that took place in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in 1944. This was right after, or right when World War II was ending, when the world leaders came together and agreed that the U.S. dollar would be the reserve currency of the world, backed by gold. And that would be, they set the stage for the economy going forward. What the IMF has now alluded to about a month ago is that they would like a new Bretton Woods style monetary reform, because the dollar, as we see it today, with the amount of debt, with the amount of struggle that's happening, with countries trying to drop the dollar around the world, it seems as though the dollar is having its last leg. So this is all baked into this Great Reset. There's a new digital currency, a new reserve currency that is more likely than not to come out of it. We are now seeing countries around the world competing for their currency to be the reserve currency. And these are the people that are involved. But how did we get here? How did we get to this point of a Great Reset? Well, this, some will argue that this is a move of the agenda, the globalist type of agenda, is that there had been always this desire to have more control over a population, to have more control over people. Some people think that from a philosophical level, that the world and the universe has really been bringing us to this point, right, of digital connectivity, of consciousness shifting onto the internet, of us moving online anyway. So some think that it was a logical approach. I'm under the personal belief that this is more of a corrupt, colluded, banking elitist kind of control. I don't really think that the internet has really caused this. I think the internet will ultimately be, it still gives people the opportunity to have some type of freedom in the world. Even if you're an individual that lives in a country where maybe there's firewalls that are up and the internet is highly regulated, you can still obtain a VPN. You can still get certain cryptographic technologies where you can communicate with people outside of your country. You can access information if you know how to do these. So the internet does still provide us the ability to have more freedoms. But I think that the banking elites, along with a lot of the technologists, are kind of have been allowed to work together in collusion to create new tools and technologies that will connect us even further, which provides control. So how do we get here again, though? Ultimately, in my view, the U.S. had its time. The dollar as a reserve currency of the world had its time. We're now seeing, ever since the last financial crisis in 07, 08, when banks got bailed out, right? So that was banks that got bailed out after 07, 08. We've had more of a milking of the U.S. society since then. And what ultimately we're seeing out of all of this that's going on around the world right now is one empire losing its power, the U.S. We have China rising in power, right? And with this, in a new push for a digital connected world, you have the Great Reset. So what the Great Reset ultimately will be is a shift for us into a digital world. And this is where you see the concepts of health vaccines and digital vaccines coming out of. This is where you see the idea of digital currencies and universal basic income coming out of. Digital identities are talked about a lot. And this is all baked into this concept of the Great Reset. But how does this affect you? How does this affect the person? How does this affect you financially? It's important to understand first financially, what it's looking like will happen is that there will be a new digital dollar, a new central bank digital currency created by either the U.S. or the IMF or China. And this will be the currency that people will be using in this future world. How will you get to use this currency? What it's looking like at the moment, or at least in my view, is that, a lot of people are on unemployment right now. A lot of people are collecting universal basic income around the world. There's a belief that the reserve currencies, the physical fiat currencies that exist today will be transitioned out, and then a digital currency will be replaced. You as a person looking for that government money will have to opt into a system. Your bank, for example, you could log onto your bank account in the morning, and maybe you see a check to agree with the terms and agreements. Maybe it's a new FedNow application or a government program, which you'll have to sign up for in order to have access to this money. People like Simon Dixon have alluded to the idea of the Fed allowing the banks to fail this time during the next full crash. And when that happens, you as a citizen will create an account with the FedNow app, and you'll have access to your money there because banks are FDIC insured. So the federal government will really roll up into one main bank. But ultimately, what you need to know is that this currency, these currencies that we're going to see come out of this future world, are going to be digital currencies. They are not going to be like Bitcoin because they will be controlled by one government. They will be controlled by one entity, and they will have an unlimited supply. If you thought inflation was amazing on fiat currencies, paper currencies, you should see what the ability to do with the digital currency will allow. And what that means is that you, over time in history, will continue to lose money. A lot of people don't know what inflation is. A lot of people don't understand why their grandparents' pension money doesn't get them buy them anything. And today, what is inflation though? Inflation is it's at the most basic level, because I know there's a lot baked into here, but the most basic level, what you need to know is it's more of a quantity of the money supply that's added in relative terms to goods and services that exist on the market. So what does that mean? That means that there's more dollars that are created in the system, and it makes your dollars worth less money. You see, banks and governments had not had the ability to do this up until 1971, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. And when that happened, a government could create more money than it actually owns. The supply of the money could be increased by the banks. And this has happened ever since the 1970s. Ever since the 1970s, if you've been holding dollars in a bank account, if you've been doing hard work in a job, been doing what you're supposed to do, if you've been putting money away this whole time in a bank account, you've been losing, because the U.S. government and the central bank has been stealing from you every single year through inflation. How do they do that? What they do is they create more money out of thin air by clicking buttons on a computer, knowing that this is what happens, and they dilute the amount of money that you have. So it makes your money worth less. This is a future that exists today. This is a reason why a lot of people are in the heartache they are financially today, is because of inflation and because wages and salaries have never increased since the 70s. So since the same time period that I'm talking about, there's a few people in society, and we all know them. You look around, you see who's done well. They've done really well. But there's the rest of you and the rest of me and the rest of us that have not done well. And it's not because that's just the way it is. It's not because you didn't do good in school. It's not because of all that. It's because at a fundamental level, you've been stolen from through inflation by the Federal Reserve Bank and your U.S. Treasury. And also, the bankers have been allowed to get away with that. So, salaries haven't increased either. But this is a currency that we're going to see out of the Great Reset, a digital dollar that can tax every transaction that you send. Imagine sending a transaction and a tax comes out of that, right? That doesn't even happen today with physical money. The currency, no matter what you do with that currency, the government will know who you pay, who you send. They have the ability to stop funds, to release funds. This is what we see right now in countries like China with certain censorship, is if you are anti-government or if you are anti-establishment, we're going to just cut your funding off. So this is the future that we see with your financial sovereignty. So not only will you be taxed on payments, on government spending, but the inflation that will exist in these currencies will be so that they have the ability to continue to milk all of us as people and benefit from that. But there is an ability for you to escape that system. Luckily we have Bitcoin. We have Bitcoin being the first ever decentralized digital currency that was launched in 2008 and 9 by Satoshi Nakamoto. It is controlled by not one country. It's controlled by not one government. It's controlled by not one entity. There's only so much Bitcoin that exists in the world, 21 million whole Bitcoin. But that's okay because it can be broken down a lot. All you need to know is that there's only so much of it that exists, and you can buy any amount of it you want. You could buy a penny's worth of Bitcoin. You could buy $500 worth of Bitcoin. But the important thing is that it can't be inflated, so governments will not be able to inflate it. It can't be controlled or stopped. Governments might be able to say it's illegal to use this, or it's illegal to pay your taxes in this, but they cannot stop a transaction from happening. They cannot stop someone from sending it from one person to another. They can see what happens, but they can't stop it. This gives you the ability to save and actually preserve wealth and value in the future. Right now, remember, if you save in dollars, you're losing. You're losing. If you're saving in dollars, you're losing in this system. You're losing in this world. You've been losing in that system since 1971, okay? The only way that you've preserved wealth over the last 30, 40, 50 years is if you've invested in the stock market, if you've bought gold or silver, if you've bought real estate, or if you've invested your money. If you haven't done anything with your dollars and you just saved it, you've lost money year over year through inflation. But with Bitcoin as a hard asset, just like gold and silver as hard assets, that means that there's a fixed amount of it that exists and governments can't create more of it. You actually are ahead of the game. Your savings in the future is worth more. Your savings in the future allows you to do things. Unlike the dollar, where your savings in the future with the dollar, you have less money. You have less money. With Bitcoin or with gold, your savings in the future is worth more. Okay? That's how this works. So the escape that you have in this system is Bitcoin. Bitcoin allows you to opt out what the bureaucrats tell you to do. It lets you to opt out from the bankers controlling you, your family, everyone. Literally, that's what happens. People don't want to hear it. They don't even know it exists. This is the truth, and I felt the need to come on here and say it because I watch the news every morning, or I don't even watch the news anymore because it's just amazing how much propaganda exists. But the fact is that people don't even know what's happening with the money supply, and the money supply is controlling a lot of what you're seeing on TV. So this is a part of that class. But with Bitcoin, your savings in the future are worth more. Now, what does this lead to? Money having value, right? What it means is that time has value. When you have a form of money, that loses value over time, there's no value in time, right? There's no value to time in savings, because if your bank account, the money in your bank account today is worth less next year, the year that's gone by, you're losing money. There's no value in that time. There's no incentive to save in that way. That doesn't allow us to plan for the future, that kind of world. That doesn't allow us to save for kids. That doesn't allow us to plan for a house, to save for medical bills. But with Bitcoin, it allows you to do all that. You can save for a future. You can save for a house. You can plan for kids because your money's worth more in that future. That's important to remember. So financially, again, what does the Great Reset bring us financially? It's looking like at the moment it's going to bring us new forms of government currencies. So the dollar, for example, but instead they will be on a blockchain. They'll be digital currencies. So you'll have the digital dollar as an example. You'll have to opt into that system, as you will with your health records, as you will with your currency. You'll have to opt in, fill out the terms and agreements, and agree to allow them to trace every transaction that ever happens. And you'll get the money, and you'll have access to this, and it will be easy for you to do, but it will come at the cost of more censoring, more inflation, more wealth inequality. People will think that the wealth is being distributed, but it will lead to more wealth inequality and not a bright future for your savings. You have an out, though. You have Bitcoin and you have Monero. These are decentralized digital currencies that, unlike the digital currencies that will come out of the Great Reset, they will have value to time. They will not be censored. They will allow you to save your money without people spying on you. These are the currencies that I've been teaching about that, I hope you continue to look into going forward. They're going to become even more important going forward. They've been just as important over the last 10 years, but they are the only escape out of that world. Now, there's a second part of the Great Reset that you'll have to worry about, and that's your digital freedom. Your digital freedom. One thing I try to discuss with people is the idea of us being in a more connected world. Elon Musk just launched a company called Neuralink, where they now have it's a computer chip that's it's smaller than the size of this coin here. It's actually probably more like a penny. It's probably more like a penny. It's like this big. It's a chip. And that chip goes right here in your head. And what actually happens is the electrodes get implanted right between the neurons in the brain. And that chip will exist right on your head. Your hair will be covering it. You won't be able to tell who has one. But these chips in the future is going to lead us to symbiosis with machines. Complete human symbiosis of the mind and the machine. Okay? Now, in this world, or in a world like that, data becomes very important. Information becomes very important. Time and time again, we've seen historically that governments and businesses don't do a good job of keeping data secure. I mean, we get emails all the time about our health records being leaked. Facebook can't keep information secure. All these governments that tell you, we're here for you. We're going to do the right thing for you. We're going to keep it secure. Number one, they do a fucking horrible job and they're always hacked. Number two, they're always using these devices to spy on us. Edward Snowden made this very clear, right? This has been talked about. But the problem is that the propaganda machines, right, the televisions, the radios, the fact that people as individuals are no longer, they have to think, they can't think for themselves, they see what they see on TV, and that's the truth. The facts have been in front of us for years now, but people have been ignoring it. But in a world where you have complete symbiosis with brain and machine, you're going to want information to be kept secure. And the way that it's looking with the Great Reset is that it's going to lead to less freedoms with our digital sovereignty and our data. In the United States right now, there's a bill being passed, or it's at least going through Congress, I think now, or the House. It might have passed Congress, called the Earn It Act. If you look up the Earn It Act, if you were to Google the Earn It Act, or you were to, don't use Google #1 anymore, you can use DuckDuckGo, you'd probably see some propaganda that exists of the government saying that, oh, okay, so what is the Earn It Act? Let's start there. The Earn It Act is an act that is what the U.S. is trying to do is make it illegal for any tech company within the United States to encrypt any of their technologies. Essentially, the government wants a backdoor to all of the technologies that exist so that they could scan every single one of your text messages, every single one of your private messages. They can track all your information and data, and they can do it legally now because it's in law and it's solidified through the Internet Act. Okay? If you Google the Internet Act, or if you actually watch the news and the propaganda that exists around it, they're going to tell you that they're doing it for child molesters and pornography and all this shit, the illegal criminal activity, which is always used as a face. Children are always used as the face of governments and people that want to make a point. We need to do this privacy for the children. Don't forget about the fact that we bombed children for a few years in Syria, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Vietnam, and all of these fucking wars over the last 80 years, right? So if you Googled it, though, you'd start seeing the propaganda. But the Internet Act is going to be, it's looking like, unfortunately, it's probably going to be passed in the United States. So everything you ever send, everything you ever do is going to be scanned, okay? Europe right now, Europe is attempting to do the same. They're passing a similar bill that will not allow tech companies to encrypt devices, encrypt applications, encrypt private messaging. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because this is a collective effort and a shift to control all of the technology, right? If we're going to put a digital currency out there, if we're going to make people have vaccinations and health records, if we're going to allow them to have digital certificates and IDs, if we're going to do all of this, we need to ensure that none of the technology is encrypted so we can have control and oversight and eyes on all of it. This is the future. This is what the Great Reset looks like. You know, and I don't mean it to sound doom and gloom, but this is the facts that we live with. If you've been following my channel, if you've been listening to a lot of the content I've been creating over the last 2 years, we've been talking about this the whole time. The whole time we've been talking about the thesis of the U.S. economy not being as bright as it was, of it going down, of the dollar losing its value, and of a transition of world powers and a complete shift in human consciousness. This is what we've been experiencing, has just been living out that thesis. All I do is I'm trying to present an objective lens, an objective view of what's going on in the world to people to learn, because you have the ability to prepare for this future and make it better for you and your family. And that's the most important part about all of this. That's the only reason why I'm doing all of this, is that the fact is that there needs to be more leadership in this world to explain the truths that are going on. Way too many people have fallen into this yes man role, especially within government, especially within banking, and it's not, you know, it's not a very bright future. But Bitcoin exists. So that's the benefit of all of this. Like, you know, the doom and gloom that exists, it doesn't have to be there, because there is an opportunity for you to have this beautiful new gold standard, Bitcoin, a decentralized cryptocurrency that allows you to save and have value, that allows you to not have your money controlled. And when you have a world that exists like that, it's a much brighter future. In history, I look back in history, and the reason why I harp on the Bitcoin stuff is because history shows that when societies have existed and functioned off of a gold standard, when the currency is operated on hard money, when governments are not allowed to create more money, they won't go to wars. They won't do all this fraud. They won't actually partake in all of these horrific events that money allows to happen. So the faster we get back to a Bitcoin standard, which is a gold standard, means that there's going to be more enlightenment, more individual freedoms, more savings, more progress that comes out of the world. Just like these periods in history when gold standards existed, society has always been flourishing the most. This is what Bitcoin, in my mind, allows us to actually get back to. So this is why, you know, I've been so passionate on these topics, and it's why I've harped on it, is because I'm a person that believes in individual freedoms. This country, the whole idea of America was built on the idea, whoever built it, I know that the founding fathers and all that stuff had their bad intentions, but it is about the freedom that exists, okay? And individuals have to remember that, all right? So all of this is about continuing that for people and getting back to a currency that's worth something, that can't be manipulated or inflated, that allows us to have value in the future, and with that will come a better society, a better world, and a better future for you, your kids, me, my kids, my future. So that's kind of the Great Reset, everyone. And this is new. You'll be hearing about it more and more as time goes on. I think we understood at this point that the news networks, the mainstream news networks, at this point just cannot be trusted. None of them. That's unfortunately the problem, is that, when people don't know what to trust, they will not trust, and that's the problem. We've had a lot of journalists that have been stepping away over the last couple of years. Julian Assange is trying to be extradited to the U.S. There's clearly a war going on information, and you can see that just from the confusion that exists on a day-to-day basis. The Great Reset is something you may or may not hear about going forward. What is it again? It's the name of a collective effort around the world, the U.S., central banks, the World Bank, the IMF, to try to reset the world into this great reset of a digital reset. With that will come digital currencies, government currencies, that will lead to more inequality, more control and censorship, and less freedoms for you. It will also lead to the de-encryption of platforms and the ability to monitor the population and masses as a whole, to prevent flow of money, to prevent people from traveling, to do all these things. This is the catapult into the digital world, folks, and the Great Reset is looking like what might lead us there. There's an ability for you to escape. You have Bitcoin and Monero as digital currency alternatives to this system that you can opt into, that will allow you to save money in the future. We'll have more money in the future, less government control, less oversight, less surveillance, and will lead to a more prosperous future. This is something we'll probably see roll out here in the coming months, and definitely in 2021. I have a firm belief that we're still in inning 2 of this. I was talking in this past March about, we were getting ready to gear up, until anyone starts going back to work. Don't expect it to get better. Unfortunately, the economy has continued to project in that same route that I've been talking about. But it's fake, because if you look at the stock market, you see all-time highs, right? Or you did. But if you look around at Main Street, you see that we're all not doing good. 40 million, I think it's like 40 million plus Americans that are unemployed. And a lot of people are now dying from suicides, from alcoholism, from domestic abuse, from things, ironically, that are different from the virus, even though we have these outrageous reactions to the virus. But how can you heal yourself and be better? Well, you keep following me. If you're someone that's looking for Bitcoin coaching, or if you're looking to learn more about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, you can subscribe to my channel. You can head over to my Patreon, where you'll find one-on-one coaching for Bitcoin. I'll meet with you on a session. I'll get you linked up, and I'll get you buying Bitcoin, get you a hardware wallet. I'll be able to explain and walk you through the whole process. If you're a business that is looking to either accept Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies for payments, or you're just looking to learn more about the technology to integrate it somehow, I have the ability to work with you one-on-one to get that figured out with you. For the people, just keep watching, keep subscribing. Tune in to Tactical Pause. It's a page I put out for breathing exercises and meditation. That is the other element to where I think people need to focus right now with mental health, is breathing and meditating. The goal is to take us all out of the moment. Remember that. The goal with all of this is to strip the individual, to take us out of the moment, to take us out of now, and to bring our attentions outside of there. Because if you do that, then you control the person more, and they have less peace with themselves, with their world, and everything that's going on. Just follow Tactical Pause, follow me here. That's going to be it for today, y'all. I've been ranting a little bit. I got to get out of here. But I'll see you in the next episode. Until next time, y'all, take care.